Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is officially a 1-year-old baby today. I remember when we were so excited for its arrival into this beautiful world. Insomniac pulled off some of the craziest baby showers ever, teasing us with glimpses of its insane world building and even some new Bully Maguire combo sets. This new Sony Marvel game installment looked so awesome, and the bar was already set so high from its older siblings. This latest addition to the franchise could potentially become the sole successor in the family. Surely Insomniac will go 3 for 3, right?
I just want to tell you how I'm feeling.
Damn it,
Gotta
you're in the
make
office.
you understand.
The introduction to the world of Spider-Man 2 starts off pretty strong with fighting one of the most iconic webhead villains, adding another character to the Insomniac roster. This boss battle also opened up a new display of open world scaling and world building. Leaving piles of sand and debris in the city in the aftermath of a Sandman fight was a great touch and definitely left a sense of immersion while swinging through the city. Great job, Brian Intihar, senior director at Insomniac Games. Something I've noticed that was a little bit new in comparison to the 2018 game was the experimentation of the slice of life aspect into this franchise. Getting to ride bicycles in the neighborhood and shoot hoops at Harry was refreshing. Even the loads of carnival rides you go on later in the game makes it feel like the direction Insomniac was taking attempted to allow their player base to experience the human sides of Peter Parker and the city of New York. And yes, I separated the two entities because at this point, the game has now personified New York in a way that's a little give or take. Some might argue that the neighborhood activities in the 2018 Spider-Man game were more fulfilling in city engagement and much more bearable to say the least. Car chases only take a single action button now. Remember those in-the-shop combat scenes against robbers? They're not there anymore. Criminals are really just the only main thing you get when it comes on to interaction with people in the city. And do not get me started on those symbiote spawning freaks, bro. I think that Insomniac sort of substituted the personification of the city interaction from NPCs to the city landmarks of interest in a way to make room for the plethora of ideas that devs had when it came on to world exploration. After all, there's only so much you can cram into a AAA game. If you haven't caught on just yet, this becomes an apparent problem. Another thing that the majority of players may have experienced were bugs and glitches on launch day. Shout out Spider-Cube, you'll be dearly missed. Some would argue that this is what led to the downward spiral of the Spider-Man 2 experience, but that's not justified. I personally had a decent playthrough with a few glitches, but downplaying the story wouldn't be a worthy enough excuse to give when basing a game on final product execution. Nothing is perfect. Programs have the potential to bug out and responsible devs will patch accordingly. This would not be the catalyst to categorize Spider-Man 2 as a forced game. Even though the traversal in combat and immersive boss fights work together to give off a compelling narrative, there's still an essential overarching component that, if handled properly, would have had the potential to make this game a consistent work of art. Understanding what could have caused Spider-Man 2 to not be greater would probably take a while to figure out, since we wouldn't know as much as those who actually participated in making it. However, we do know what works and what doesn't by the power of comparison. And I know that not many people like the thought of comparing because it can be misused to disembody someone else's craft wrongfully. But as a passionate consumer of all things Insomniac and Spider-Man related, I want to give light to the ideas these developers also find passionate, whether the take is hot or based. And psychologically speaking, that's what everyone does anyway, so this segment should be fun. While playing Spider-Man 2, we want to feel like Spider-Man, and the traversal does a very good job at fulfilling that. But as insanely moody as Spider-Man fans can get, there's a limit that we're familiar with seeing Peter Parker break, and it's very possible that we didn't get to see that in this game. Sure, the city's in turmoil, and in true Parker fashion, he beats himself up for not saving the ones he loves. There's no job, the mortgage on Aunt May's house is due, and Venom does unspeakable things to his girlfriend. But as the plot continues to add layers, it becomes a little bit more difficult to see this going in a way that completely satisfies the character of Spider-Man. And it also makes me wonder about the direction. What exactly was Insomniac going for with the amount of time that they had? I've heard this topic being referred to as
Spider-Man didn't save me back there. Miles did.
Remember when I mentioned the overarching component that makes or breaks a project like Spider-Man 2? I was alluding to the story, and even though I didn't notice the issues at first because I had a hype overload during my entire playthrough with the mechanics also keeping me occupied, I ultimately started looking into what exactly this experience was all about. And things got a little Eh? I am sure that we can all agree that the third act of Spider-Man 2 felt like even more of an adrenaline rush than Spider-Man Unlimited. Hey, I just took a brief moment to squeeze that one-liner in because apparently this beloved game is now back in app stores. I haven't really had much time to take a look for myself, but feel free to give it a shot and let me know if it goes well. If it does, hooray, Let's Go Peak Gaming is back. If not, with Spider-Man Unlimited, you'll be dearly missed. So Peter gets affected by the symbiote. Miles saves Peter from symbiote. Venom deploys symbiotes to enact world domination. Venom desires Peter as Venom threatens to take Peter's loved ones. Venom feeds off the emotions of Peter's loved ones. Peter struggles, but Miles and Lee save Peter and gets an upgrade. Let's talk about that for a second. So the city is being consumed by the invasion of symbiotes, but Miles and Peter get overwhelmed until the man of the hour, Martin Lee, comes to help. Peter is being taken over by the symbiote, so Lee and Miles go into his mind to rescue him. While doing so, Miles confronts Lee about the damage Lee's done throughout his villainous career, which grievously affected Miles. And this is a great turning point for both characters. Miles, although not forgiving Lee, comes to terms with reality and attempts to become a better person instead of bitter. While Lee, being consumed by his past errors, comes to a moment of reflection. In seeing that he cannot undo his wrongs, aims to atone for them, concluding an unresolved arc in the development of Miles's and Martin Lee's character. But in the midst of all that, Peter gets a super buff after having Mr. Negative's powers fused with the remaining symbiote. This is the introduction to Insomniac's version of the anti-Venom suit. And while this is a cool concept, this takes away from the usual Peter Parker core, where we see him struggle and overcome those struggles with the help of some inspiration or motivation to keep him going. This just feels like a quick boost to undermine Peter's victory over Venom and weakens the game's theme of balance and consequence. Just imagine what would happen if Lee wasn't there to save Peter and Miles. Could the story have been more compelling with even higher stakes? I believe it would make for a greater storyline and would adjust the pacing in the final act. Though the Sandman boss fight did its part in setting up the plot for Kraven, Venom's arc exceedingly overshadows the impact that the previous villains had in the beginning of the story. It kinda makes you feel like Insomniac bit off more than they could chew. The main issue was that Insomniac established multiple character arcs and attempted to give a conclusive end within a short time frame. Let's take the Scream vs. Spider-Man fight for instance, or more appropriately, MJ vs. Peter. This boss fight was hard, but for the wrong reasons. MJ's character arc seems to have hit a reset since the previous game. She wants to feel like she can make an impact, but her superhero boyfriend keeps getting the spotlight. This gets a little bit tiresome, as seeing through the lens of Spider-Man, it's already really tough to take on all the responsibility of saving the city, and now MJ's emotions are fueling a symbiote monster and I gotta fight Scream, while simultaneously attempting to save a relationship. I've heard a thought from the YouTuber That Boy Aqua in his retrospective that really nails this experience on the head. Essentially, MJ's our op. She wants Peter to focus on his personal life instead of superhero duties, and this directly contradicts our intention as players because we just want to beat the bad guys. Because we're freaking Spider-Man. To me, the MJ story just felt like it started back from ground zero, and her development as a character wasn't increasingly impactful. Some believe that for a Spider-Man story, this one was just too vanilla. And I see where you're coming from, and you can draw your own conclusion for yourself. But you gotta admit that Venom vs. Kraven was raw, and it got pretty metal towards the end. Well, until it didn't. One thing that threw me off was when after Miles saved Harry, Norman was aggressive towards Spider-Man. Sure, he's upset that his boy was hurt, but he's alive, and could have been not alive. Norman's in a difficult place, and for right now, that's exactly where he needs to be. But the reasons for his pain could be so much more impactful. The high stake of Harry Osborn dying in the final acts would be a monumental consequence, leaving a huge impact for what's to come next, and personally, that outcome would have been a greater motivation for Norman Osborn to truly detest Spider-Man. Cause I told you to—
Please. Save my boy.
And you didn't, so now I'm mad. Overall, all of this went down in a way that was somewhat chaotic but still fun to play. Right until the main story gets completed. After the main story's completion, there isn't much left to do than to trickshot through the city, gather collectibles, and complete side missions. This post-story gameplay feels subpar in comparison to previous installments. The 2018 Spider-Man experience was unlike any game out there. It paved the way for new styles of immersion that we see in games today. The Taskmaster's side missions really stood out to me because it felt like crazy things would really just go down in New York City at any time. Casually swinging through the city and getting caught out of nowhere really made it worth playing. It wasn't even the main story, but it felt like it was. However, with Spider-Man 2, the missions aren't that exciting and get repetitive. Now, I know that the devs who worked on this game seem to have the same drive since 2018, and that can be seen through the sheer quality and performance. But it led me to speculate how this game had so many noticeable flaws, and this could have been caused by several different factors. But one of them that you're probably already familiar with is the massive infrastructure breach that happened to Insomniac in December of 2023. If you're unaware, a hacking group demanded over $2 million to prevent the release of sensitive information online. When Insomniac refused to pay the ransom, the hackers published a large amount of data, including early development builds of Marvel's Wolverine. This could have possibly discouraged the employees at Insomniac from developing or even continuing post-story content. Not to mention that in true internet fashion, the Wolverine game, which is still being developed, had received hard scrutiny for not being fully developed. I just know that had to tick some of them off, bro. To see that one company had been going through enough hard work for Spider-Man 2 and Marvel's Wolverine shows that there's pressure to not just meet a demand, but execute a good product, and the internet did not make that any easier for them. So, what could have happened for Spider-Man 2? I think it would be great to reflect on the things that were great and also fantasize about the things that could have happened to make it better. Look at the final boss fight. It was done incredibly well, but it would have been so tough to have some sort of tag team co-op battle where you can swap between Peter and Miles as they fight Venom. I mean, it just felt like wasted potential. The game was established as a single-player experience where we can swap between two Spider-Man. Having a real-time character switch mechanic was something I subconsciously expected to see in a game like this. And for post-story content, Spider-Man 2 could have given us higher rewards for exploration and could have even placed secrets around New York for a surprise boss fight or something, because those freaking symbiotes, bro, I'm gonna keep talking about this, okay? The symbiote freaks have to stop. They get tiring, alright? But in light of all things gaming, I actually took inspiration from seeing this high-risk, high-reward style being implemented in a potential Game of the Year nominee for 2024. That's right, I'm talking about Astro Boy. I'm sorry, nah, I'm just playing. I'm actually talking about. Well, no, not that. That's a great game though. Like it's a life game for real. I was actually, no, I'm talking. Wukong. I'm talking about Black Myth Wukong. Similarly with the Taskmaster encounters, Black Myth Wukong has several secret boss fights to find and gives a high reward for beating them. Whether it's treasure chests, item upgrades, or new skills, it makes you want to find every potential boss out there so you can feel fulfilled in decking out your kit. Putting a bunch more interesting stuff around the map in Spider-Man 2 would have caused for a greater sense of immersion outside the main story and leave players engaged, wanting to explore the city more. And though this is a completely different style of RPG game, I believe I can see some of these elements taking their own form in the Spider-Man franchise. This review garners no hate towards Spider-Man 2, nor anyone who took part in making Spider-Man 2. Shout out to Brian Intihar, Senior Director at Insomniac Games, the devs, and everyone who had any part in making this project. You guys did your thing. This is just a hard critique from the perspective of a passionate consumer who expects the best out of one of the best video game companies out there. And I hope this represents the community of other consumers that feel the same way about this franchise. Cause the game is great, but it could have been greater. Together.
Bro, yo, somebody could build this, man, bro.
Oh what, you don't like that?
That was ass, bro. Oh my
what?
God.
Oh my god. Bro, I thought that was good.
That sucked. I can't lie.
Bro, what do you?
That was
you
corny,
think you got something better? You think you got something better up your sleeve, bro?
You suck at this.